The mining conference season in London is coming up. December's always very busy, and the end of November too. The Divisional Director of Resourcing Tomorrow, Andrew Thake, joins us now. Resourcing Tomorrow is probably the biggest conference, London's longest standing mining conference. So, how's it looking this year, Andrew?
It's shaping up really, really well. We've got record numbers. We're shaping up for our biggest attendance since 2012, sort of the height of the last sort of like metals boom. So it's like all set for a really, really excellent event.
Yeah, so you've been updating people via email and the other distribution channels that you have about some of the keynote speakers that you've been able to bring in this year. Tell us some of the big names that are coming.
Yeah, I think first and foremost is the US government, because I think that increasingly they're just so integral to mining policy, whether it's in terms of critical minerals policy or whether it's in terms of investment decisions. So we've got keynote speakers from the Department of War, such as Adam Burstein. We've also got Sarah Whitten from US Exim, and we're expecting quite a large delegation from Team USA. We've also got, I guess, keynote speakers from BHP, Anglo American, also Vale Base Metals, people like Sean Usma, who's obviously just recently joined them as CEO, also Bill Oppinger, the CEO of Alcoa, and also Jody Kuzenko from Torex, who's one of our shortlisted candidates for Mining Leader of the Year award.
So you mentioned the American government at the top of that reply there. Do you think the DFC might be knocking around as well? They've been making some big moves in the mining sector.
We're expecting a big contingent from Team USA, so we're expecting the DFC to come, perhaps the OSC as well. And we're sort of like also like aiming to sort of like reach out to sort of like higher like levels and hopefully even get the Undersecretary to go and come along. I think probably like linked to that is we've got a record number of governments coming along to Resourcing Tomorrow this year. Last year, we partnered with the London Stock Exchange to organise a government roundtable at the London Stock Exchange on the 1st of December, the day before Resourcing Tomorrow. And we had 42 governments coming along, of which 21 were at ministerial level. This year, we've got 55 governments, of which 27 are at ministerial level. And I think that that's really important because the conversations that we have at that government roundtable then go and set the scene for the whole week. So those governments we're talking about G7, critical minerals policy, and how that sort of breaks down into impacting standard space markets, to impact capital, and also to impact innovation in supply chains. And those, of course, some of the themes that are then carried on into Resourcing Tomorrow on the 2nd to the 4th of December.
I mean, it's an interesting way to measure the advance of the mining sector and perhaps the recovery of the mining sector compared to how it looked 5 years ago. Is the amount of government involvement and government interest that there is in this sector, and the fact that you guys are increasing the amount of governments that you have coming year on year just seems to be a signpost of that.
I think it's a really interesting point you've made there, Alistair. If we'd been doing this interview back in 2022, I'd have probably led the off the interview with how many mining companies we have coming and how many investors. And I might have mentioned, oh, we've got a dozen or so governments as a sort of like instant of passing. But don't get me wrong, it is important. We do have 175 mining companies coming along. We do have over 500 investors. But I think that governments are increasingly important for our clients to meet, whether it is the majors and mid-tiers attending, but even some of those sort of juniors, as we've seen by some of those financing deals.
So let's just have a quick recap, just for anyone who isn't familiar with the format. What actually happens at resourcing tomorrow? How do the attendees what experience do they have, and what experience do the exhibitors have? How does it all fit together?
Yeah. So I think I'll probably break it down into three areas. I mean, the overall event takes place at the Business Design Centre from the 2nd to the 4th of December. And when you attend, you can attend like a couple of like areas and so break it down into three areas. One is the exhibition itself, where we have the majority of those 175 mining companies will be exhibiting. We also have some of the governments will also be exhibiting as well, along with some leading technology suppliers as well and leading consultants. We also link to that as well, have a meeting planner where you can go and meet with other attendees. We find that is of a lot of value to the investors who want to meet up with the miners and the miners who want to meet up with the investors. So it's essentially like a matchmaking service. And that really has been very, very successful in terms of especially bringing in like capital to some of those juniors, of which it's just so critical for obviously furthering their exploration to help getting those projects into production. And then the third aspect is actually the content itself. So we have three theatres of content. We have the mining investment theatre, where the mining juniors go and talk about the latest projects. But we also have keynotes in there from the likes of Rick Rule, obviously the legendary investor, and also Ronnie Peter Soffley, the author of In Gold We Trust reports. We also, in the second theatre, we have these things called leadership roundtables. These leadership roundtables are 90 minutes Chatham House rules discussions where we go into more sensitive topic areas that probably make sense to happen behind closed doors. So topics might include things such as defense critical minerals, or they could be issues such as controlling the cost of capital, or there could be topics such as Ukraine or on standards. And then last but no means least, we have our plenary theatre, which we have our big keynote speaking. So that's where you'll find the likes of Robert Freeland, obviously sort of talking about obviously what they're up to at Ivanhoe, or you'll be able to go and hear those speakers from Alcoa, BHP, Anglo American that I mentioned earlier.
So the event is now sort of slotted into what's sort of more broadly known as what is it, Mining Week or Mining Investment Week? What's the
Yeah,
branding you got there?
yeah. So it comes under the umbrella of London Mining Week, and
Yeah.
we took the decision in collaboration with our partners at the start of the year because it had always been beneficial for us that there was other events going on in the same week. So Critical Minerals Association UK do a great event on the 1st of December, as do Minex Eurasia. Then there's also the Northern Miner do their London Symposium that takes place on the Sunday and the Monday. And then there's also events throughout the week. There's some drinks receptions done by Oxford Mining Club, done by Young Mining Professionals, done by Battery Britain. And what we said to them is like, especially helps us, especially when it's delegates from outside the UK deciding whether or not to come to London. If we can say, look, we've got a number of different events you can go to rather than you're just flying in for Resourcing Tomorrow or you're just flying in for CMA UK or for Minex Eurasia, it would make people more likely to go and stay for the whole week. So we were doing that umbrella advertising, and I really have to go and thank our partners that they've kind of really sort of supported the idea and helped us like promote it. And I think that that's been one of the critical success factors in terms of why numbers are up this year, because when you work together as a team, rather than try to say, come to my event rather than yours, when maybe just come to both as just the kind of like better like option, then you kind of like see the results as we've definitely seen with resourcing tomorrow.
Yeah, I think numbers were up at the Oxford Mining Club last year as well, talking about numbers being up because that was a massive drinks event there, hundreds of people.
Yeah, yeah, I'm actually going to the Oxford Mining Club Winter's Drink for the first time this year because probably a few years ago, their summer mining club, their kind of like summer event is always a fantastic event by obviously up in Oxford, but obviously can only cater for 120 or so people. But everyone has been raving as to how good the winter drinks are. So I will probably be drinking low alcohol drinks because I have another 3 days after that. But I am going to go to it sort of like this year, and we'll look forward to meeting you there.
Yeah, I'll see you there, Andrew. So there's also another event which you haven't mentioned, the gala dinner. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so the Garland Dinner and Awards, I think it's just now in our 22nd year. So we've got eight kind of categories in areas such as ESG, in areas such as Exploration Discovery of the Year, Mining Leader of the Year that I mentioned earlier, where the likes of Sean Usmer and Jody Kuzeko are up on the shortlist. Rising Star of the Year, we have a Woman in Mining UK award, and M&A Deal of the Year, which is obviously very interesting this year. And last but by no means least, our Lifetime Achievement Award, which unfortunately I can't go and tell you as to who has won. But if you're there on the evening, all will be revealed.
So no spoilers at this point. Do we know who the host will be? I mean, normally you have somebody quite interesting and colourful.
This year is we have actually gone for some hosts from the mining industry. So that's something we did actually like a couple of years ago. So we've got a host from the mining industry, which is Lucy Crane, who's the managing director of Women in Mining UK. And
Yeah.
we've also got Dave Walker, who was formerly at SLR Consulting and now has his own advisory business. But instead of an after dinner comedian entertainment, we've got something else on planned for this year. And I can't go and reveal that. You'll have to turn up on the evening, Alistair, I'm afraid.
Oh, exciting, exciting. So finally, to round us off, Andrew, perhaps you could just talk a little bit more generally. What sort of atmosphere or vibe do you expect there to be on the floor of resourcing tomorrow this year? Because the mining sector seems to have come alive in the last 6 to 9 months. Do you expect it to be a vibrant atmosphere and busy, busy?
Absolutely, and really expect it to be like buzzing. I mean, as an aside, is there was obviously the London Metals Exchange Week, obviously like a couple of weeks ago, and to be honest, typically I'd found that to be, you know, a great week, but not really appropriate for somebody in the mining industry because, they were mainly like commodity focused events. But there was a real huge buzz and vibe when I sort of went to some of those events. And again, think just because of the rising commodity prices, whether we're talking about rising prices in gold, copper, or whichever commodity you could go and name, I think that that spills through to London Mining Week and to resourcing tomorrow. And there's some really kind of and also I think on top of that is there's the real recognition as to how important mining is now. So whether it's on themes such as resilient supply chains and how that impacts, areas such as defense, whether it is to what is the future of ESG, of which the answer is there still is a very strong future. It's just that people now call it sustainability rather than ESG. Whether it's about what looks like good mining leadership in the time of geopolitical uncertainty, whether it's about issues such as vertical integration and probably the roles of the midstream and the roles of the downstream. There's lots of meaty issues to go and discuss, and Resourcing Tomorrow is a perfect forum to go and have those discussions, along with a world-class exhibition and along with a world-class meeting planner.
Yeah, I suppose it's worth saying is that a lot of the action actually happens or takes place on the side areas of the conference where people meet up and concoct their plans for the future.
Yeah, I'm very, very reminded by the story, and I can't say which royalty and streaming company it was, but a relatively well-known royalty and streaming company met an Australian brewery at our event a number of years ago by accident on the sidelines of the event. And it turned out that the Australian brewery owned obviously plots of land, which they then ended up doing a deal to go and buying some land for mining exploration. So you can do the strangest deals at Resourcing Tomorrow.
Well, we're looking forward to a great event. Thanks very much for that preview, Andrew, and we'll see you there.
Thank you much for your time, Alistair.